So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the webinar. I will give the floor to Rossella that will introduce the main topic of the webinar and the agenda.
Thank you, Christina. I will first share the screen. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this first of the Hydra project. And I want to have a business unit for European development. We are a consultancy company and different European projects. For Hydra, we have a sister company based in Belgium, which is called Warrant, and who's coordinating the project. And Warrant Hub is a partner. And I'm leading the technical coordination activities. And my background is actually in atmospheric physics. In physics, that's why I was involved in the project. And just to give you an overview what we are gonna hear today, I will give a very short introduction on the project because actually many of the people who joined already know about us, but just to give an overlook to the people who don't do already. And then I'm going to leave the floor to Paolo Marocco from Politecnico di Torino, which is involved in the project. They will present their first results, starting with actually a general presentation of the role that hydrogen will have in the energy transition. And then I will take actually the floor again to present you the result from Cartif, because unfortunately they couldn't join today. So I'm going to give the presentation about the policies related on their behalf. We have a second presentation by Politecnico di Torino, Davide Trapani and Marta Gandiglio especially. They will present the results that we have related to the hydrogen supply chain and possible leakage emissions that could lead to some impacts on the biosphere. And then we also are very pleased to host other 3 European projects that are to understand how hydrogen can be used in 2 different end uses. So we will have a presentation of the Life Ocean project by coordinator Markus Wagner from Siemens Energy, and of the Advanced H2Valley project by Olivier Joblin from Life. And then we will close with the presentation of the NhyRA project by Vittoria Truisi from SNAM. We won't have a Q&A session after each presentation, but we will keep it for the end. You have free access to the chat, so if you have any question about the presentation, just write there, and then we will take the questions at the end of all the presentations. Okay, so I can just briefly start with an introduction, an overall presentation of the project. Our Environment Executive Agency. So the project started at the end of 2023, and we have 4 years to complete our activities. We will end the project at the end of October 27. I said the coordinator is Warrant, which is Warrant Hub sister company, in the person of Dr. Isabella Vicini. We have, apart from the Warrant Hub, also other partners. I already mentioned Politecnico di Torino. They are going to present their activities and results today, and also Cartif here today, but they are the scientific coordinators of the project, which is a research innovation action. And we also have 2 other partners based in Italy, a company which is called Automa, and a group from the National Research Council, the ISAC group. Then we have a research center in Greece, Sirth, and 2 universities, one based in Spain, which is the University of Valladolid, and one based in the UK, which is the Lancaster University. And what we aim to do together is to assess the possible impact that widespread of hydrogen. This is linked to the fact that hydrogen is actually not a greenhouse gas, but it interacts with different gases already present in the atmosphere. With mechanisms of some important greenhouse gases, this would cause some impacts of finally climate, but also on the environment. So what we want to assess to quantify the actual impact that could come from this increase in emission if hydrogen technologies are adopted at large scale, starting from an analysis of the market, because we want to know how much hydrogen we will face in the future to quantify possible leakages and emission. And the final aim of our work is to understand both benefits and risks and develop some guidelines for a sustainable development of the hydrogen. This is our workflow. We started with this analysis of the technologies that can be developed in the near to long term, looking also at possible market scenarios and analysis of the policy framework to understand how hydrogen technologies are nowadays supported by also policymakers. And these data are our starting point also for the modeling activities that will tell us how hydrogen emissions will impact the atmospheric composition and ultimately climate and the environment. At the same time, we are also working on a tool that in the long term will make hydrogen technologies safer because we are planning to develop and test a sensor for the detection and quantification of hydrogen leakages. Altogether, these activities will help us to think about possible mitigation strategies to face the risks that would come from our analysis and develop policy guidelines. So these are very briefly our objectives and workflow. I will now leave the floor to Rocco, Politecnico di Torino, for the presentation of the role of hydrogen in the energy transition. So please, Paolo, the floor is yours.
Your microphone is on mute.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paolo Marocco, researcher from Politecnico di Torino, from the Energy Department. And in this presentation, we will give you a brief overview of the role of hydrogen in this ongoing energy transition. I want to start with this picture from IRENA, where we can see on the bottom left part of the picture all the applications where direct electrification is the most feasible solution from a technical and economic point of view. So we can see, for example, residential heating, mid-temperature heating, but also light vehicles. And for these applications where electrification is feasible, this is the choice to prefer. But if we move to the upper right part of the graph, we move to sectors that are harder to electrify. So we are talking about high temperature heating, but also heavy duty transport, the chemical sector, and also steel production. And for all these applications, we have that electrification can be difficult to achieve or even unfeasible. So hydrogen, but more generally, hydrogen-based fuels can represent a very good and promising solution. But we should also know that currently hydrogen is already in use. Almost 100 megatons of hydrogen are consumed per year, mainly, as we can see from the pie chart on the upper part of this slide, for refining, but also for the chemical sector, so ammonia, methanol, and a small share also for iron and steel. But almost all this hydrogen currently is based on fossil fuels, as we can see from the other graph, more than half from natural gas, I mean gas reforming. We also have gasification, and the share of blue hydrogen and hydrogen from electrolysis are almost negligible. So if we want to achieve the main decarbonization targets, we need to produce hydrogen in a sustainable way, and we also need mainly to increase the capacity of electrolyzers. And this is a picture of the hydrogen demand for the current case, but also the expected hydrogen demand in the future. And we can see that in 2050, it is expected that the overall hydrogen demand will be around 5 to 6 times higher than the current one. And we can see an increase in the demand for industry, but also the appearance of new applications. We have road mobility, aviation, shipping, and also power production. In the following slide, we will show a very brief explanation of some key sectors. So starting with the transportation sector, we have batteries that, due to their great efficiency, are the choice to prefer if they are technically feasible. But when we have mainly weight constraints, batteries are ideal for short to medium distances. So as we can see from this graph, they are located in the lower left part. So for vehicles with low weight and also short autonomy. But moving to heavy-duty vehicles that require higher autonomies, we also have the appearance of hydrogen and are good solution for the decarbonization. And the same concept is also clearly shown here, where we have the optimal technology for transport as a function of the electricity price and the hydrogen price. We have the blue area refers to batteries, whereas the green area refers to the use of fuel cells. And we can see that if we move from urban vehicles up to long-haul applications, we have an expansion of the green area, meaning that fuel cells becomes more and more effective by moving towards heavier duty vehicles. But hydrogen is also very promising as a long-term energy storage. Here we have a comparison between battery storage and hydrogen storage. Battery, as I said before, is promising. Batteries are very promising due to their very high efficiency, which is almost 3 times, I mean the round trip efficiency of the storage, which is almost 3 times higher than that of hydrogen. But if we look at the cost to store 1 unit of energy, so euro per kilowatt hour, we have that the cost of batteries is very high compared to that of hydrogen. So this means that batteries are highly effective for short-term energy storage, but hydrogen is also very useful if we move towards seasonal storage. And this concept is visible from this picture. This is the cost of energy as a function of CO2 that are reduced in the energy system. This refers to a specific energy system in Northern Europe. And we can see that if we decrease the amount of CO2 emissions, we have an increase in the cost of energy. This is because we need to install more renewable power and also more energy storage to cope with this intermittent renewable production. And we can see that at a certain point, we have also the presence of hydrogen, the blue area, since hydrogen is highly effective to keep low the cost of energy when moving towards a high renewable scenario. This is particularly evident if we compare the cost of hydrogen in the full renewable solution with that of only batteries. And we can see that if we have only batteries, the cost is very high. But if we have an hybrid solution with both batteries and hydrogen, we can reduce considerably the final cost. Finally, hydrogen is also very effective, can have a role in the production of e-fuels, can be reacted with the carbon dioxide to generate carbon-based fuels, but also with the nitrogen to generate ammonia. And in the upper part, we have the current configuration, which is for the production of ammonia, which is based on natural gas. Whereas in the lower part, we have a configuration where hydrogen is generated by considering water electrolysis. The carbon dioxide, which is emitted by these two configurations, as a function of the carbon intensity of the electricity which is used to power the ammonia production process. So the green lines refer to the electrolysis-based solutions, whereas the gray line refers to steam methane reforming, so the current configuration. And it's interesting to note that the electrolysis-based solution becomes more effective from an environmental point of view if the carbon intensity of electricity is low. So hydrogen remains a good solution, but we need to use low carbon hydrogen. And the European Union is moving towards this direction. So by setting constraints to produce renewable hydrogen, for example, the recent RED III directive. And finally, I would like to end this presentation with the example for Italy. In the last few years, several funding have been allocated to hydrogen-based initiatives. This is the example of the PNRR initiative, where funds have been set for the entire supply chain of hydrogen, as we can see from this picture. So for hydrogen production, but also for hydrogen use, hydrogen manufacturing of electrolyzers, research and development. And I think that this holistic approach is the ideal way to promote the use of hydrogen. So to not only provide funding for hydrogen production, but also to promote the hydrogen demand, so that we hydrogen. This is a scheme that shows the location around across Europe of the main hydrogen initiatives and projects that have been funded in terms of hydrogen production plants, so the green dots, but also hydrogen refueling stations, and we can see also hydrogen-based railway lines. So thank you for the attention.
Thank you, Paolo. So just to remind everyone that if you have any question, you can write them in the chat and then answer at the end of the webinar. So next presentation is the one about the policies. Just going to share the screen. Okay, so as anticipated, our creative team couldn't join, so I'm going to give the presentation on their behalf. They led the activities related to the policy Hydra, supported by also other partners like Automa, Polito, and CERT. What they started from was the definition of some key terms that will help us navigate the policy making contents. The terms that I analyzed are summarized in this slide. As you can see, we have the overall term, which is related to the policy measure itself, which is the intervention. So it is typically driven by public bodies, and it aims to make a change with respect to the current trends in different areas. Could be people behavior, infrastructure, technology. So they can be implemented in very different sectors and seek to achieve an objective and a target through policy instruments. So the objective is the general outcome, which is expected from an implementation of the policy measure, whereas the target is a quantitative expression of the intended effect that the measure aims for. So in this case, case, the objective of the measure is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and the target tells us precisely by which amount we intend to reduce them. So in this case, by at least 55% below 1990 levels by 2030. But the policy measure also tells us how we plan to reach this target. So we talk in this case about two different policy instruments, because we see that here carbon taxes and also social awareness campaigns are raised. So the instruments are actually different tools and mechanisms that can be implemented to reach the target. There are different instruments, but we can identify four main types. The first is regulatory, so it's an intervention that sets some rules or trends or bans unsustainable or inefficient technologies or practices, or sets some limitations for some goods and services production or consumption. We can have some economic instruments that provide incentives, benefits, tax benefits, or other measures from public bodies or international organizations that promote investments or certain actions or behaviors. We can have like soft instruments like partnerships or agreements or learning processes that rely on voluntarism, so they do not rely on direct influence or regulations or finances. And then we have a different type of instrument, which we call research and development, which do not have a direct impact on tendencies, but focus on new ideas for the future, promoting research and development projects. What we did in Hydra was to assess different policy measures, different targets that were set at European level, or looking deeper also at a national level inside the European Union. But we also looked at the rest of the world, scouting all the global policies that were available, so that we could also compare global hydrogen strategies and national hydrogen strategies. There are different policy targets in the EU, but today I'm going to present the three that you see listed here. So first of all, the EU hydrogen strategy. That was the first document which was published by the European Union. It was published in 2020, and the objective was to foster the use of renewable hydrogen, and also to set the target for this sector in the near future. So the strategy commits to hydrogen to reach the objective of reducing GHG emission by 55% by 2030. So recall in the first slide. And it is estimated that an investment of 180 to 470 billion euros will be needed to deploy green hydrogen and achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement, together with 3 to 18 billion euros for low carbon fossil-based hydrogen that can help in the transition. But with this commitment, it is estimated that hydrogen would be able to cover 24% of the total energy demand of the world by 2050. And to produce this hydrogen, the European Union plans to install 40 gigawatt of electrolysis power inside the European Union by 2050. Then we have the Fit for 55 package, which consists in a number of recommendations that aim at modernizing the European laws and also promote new projects aligned with the European climate goals. The package includes different points, like the objective of 66% of renewable and low carbon gas fueled in the EU by 2050. 2050, a new road infrastructure that includes a hydrogen vehicles network, and a target of 50% of the cars running on alternative fuels by 2050, minimum share for sustainable aviation fuels of 5% by 2030 and 63% by 2050. Minimum shares for maritime fuels of renewable fuels from non-biological origin and biofuels, which is in at least 5.5% by 2030. New taxes to energy products and electricity, which levelize the cost of different fuels, preserving the European market while boosting the use of green fuels. And then the industrial target of reaching a 42% share of RFMBOs by 2030. And then, as a final point, new buildings regulation for zero emission from 2030 onward, with the possibility of installing cogeneration system that can also be based on hydrogen. Then last policy target I'm going to list to cite is the Repower EU, which expands the targets that were presented in the Fit for 55 plan, and also establishes the instruments that are necessary for its achievement. So related to hydrogen, Repower EU set a target to produce 10 million tons of hydrogen and import another 10 by 2030 to cover the future demand. And to reach this target, the Commission has published 2 delegated acts which define the RFMBOs and the renewable hydrogen to regulate the production, supply and consumption of this fuel, and set a target of covering 75% of the industry energy use plus 5% of the transport. And this Repower EU also sets the investment of 200 million euros from the Hydrogen JU for the creation of hydrogen valleys, and gives the priority to hydrogen-related projects for the IPCEI. And then finally, the Repower EU focuses on creating new hydrogen regulation and standards and keep track of the hydrogen uptake through periodic reports. So the plan estimates a need of a very fast deployment of infrastructure to reach the requirements of the hydrogen economy, expecting investments of 28 to 38 billion euros for the hydrogen infrastructure and 6 to 11 for storage infrastructures. So the analysis of policies that were carried out in Hydra included also registering the release year of each policies, and this led us to this chart that shows the growing importance that different countries and regions are giving to hydrogen as time passes. So the graph shows how many policies presenting hydrogen targets or instruments were published per year, starting from 2003 up to 2024. Actually, the year 2024 was only partially covered due to the presentation of the results that we had, so the end of the activity in the project. But nevertheless, as you can see from the graph, since 2018, the number of new policies that were released about hydrogen has been growing steadily. They cover increasingly more sectors and set clear targets both for the short term and the long term. So if this growth continues, actually hydrogen has a possibility to have a major impact on all economic and social sectors globally. So this slide instead presents 2 different bar charts. On the left, you see how governments are betting actually on transport and industry to be the main sectors decarbonized by hydrogen. Mainly we're talking the hard-to-abate sectors like freight transport or high-temperature industry, while the buildings, fuel processing, electricity generation sectors are either integrated in more general policies, so the ones that are not focused on specific sectors, or not seen as having enough potential to have a significant effect in the medium term. While if you look at the bar chart on the right, we also assess the value chain, dividing it and assessing it separately. So as the graph shows, the production and supply are the main focus of the hydrogen economy, with hydrogen transportation remaining in the background from a policy perspective. It can also be inferred that hydrogen storage is not a priority at the moment. So the hydrogen economy as of now is intended to use the produced fuels continuously without generating storages. Instead, if we look at the different instruments that were implemented, by far the most recurrent policy instrument are the economic ones. So among these, we see that direct investment stand out, probably because it's the most efficient to get projects off the ground in a short period of time. While we have market-based instruments and fiscal incentives that are maybe more difficult to design, but it also may be more difficult to make them work for the intended purposes. While then we have regulatory instruments that also have an important role to play, but for the most part through codes and standards, while we have no quota for obligation schemes in the hydrogen sector. Okay, so this is instead an outlook related to the national policies inside the European Union. So I already said that the EU plans to install 40 gigawatt of electrolyzers to produce 10 million tons per year of hydrogen by 2030. All the European countries have different objectives, and they have been translated into electrolysis capacity so that we could compare them. It's difficult to understand the differences between the different countries and to justify them. Basically, each country has set its own objectives based on different criteria and also based on their own expectations. But nevertheless, it's clear that many regions inside the European Union are glad to invest in this sector, and they intend to do so to support hydrogen technologies. And as you can see from the graph on the right side, EU countries would need an aggregate total capacity of over 52 gigawatt to reach all the national targets that were set at national level. This would mean that by 2030 we could actually overcome the objective set by the EU of this 40 gigawatt by more than the 25%. So similar analysis was also done considering main countries that have developed hydrogen strategies or have the potential to do so at global level. So outside the European Union, we have even more significant differences. Some countries, it's clear that they are aiming to influence the global hydrogen economy and compete for the international trade. While others focus more on just meeting their domestic demand. There are also some differences on the goals that were set, because some of them set just short-term goals, while others looked at more long-term, while others even just proposed strategies without setting any goal. However, if we do the same as we did for the European Union and sum all the contributions, by 2030 at global level, the electrolysis capacity could overcome 250 gigawatt. So just to briefly conclude, from our analysis, we have seen that policies that policies are focusing on hydrogen in the last period, in the last decades, mainly for its production and use in the transport and industrial sector. This is the priority. Our analysis also highlights that the use of direct investment is the main economic instrument to promote hydrogen projects, as well as setting codes and standards for the regulatory instrument part. However, if we expect a significant impact on the decarbonization of the economy from the hydrogen, then we need an aligned legislative effort for all energy sectors and links in the value chain. And it is crucial that hydrogen consumption covers as many appropriate sectors as possible to make the deployment of large production plants profitable. The transition process towards a unified industry cannot be overlooked. So in the short term, generation and consumption may be unbalanced, and it will be necessary to adapt current system to a new reality of low CO2 emissions and hydrogen consumption. In this regard, hydrogen policies have been mostly promptly solely from an energy perspective, but it may also be important to consider the potential impact on other sectors or systems such as water or land use, social impact, emission generation, and also promote cross-sectoral policies that alleviate the potential undesired impacts. And actually, this is something that we will look more into within our project. Okay, so this was the end for my presentation. We can continue with the presentation from Davide Trapani e Marta Gandiglio from Politecnico di Torino about the hydrogen supply chain and leakage emissions. So Marta and Davide, I don't know who wants to start.
Thanks, Rossella. Thanks for introducing. Marta Gandiglio from Polito speaking. We have seen so far that hydrogen can be an important element in the energy transition, but on the other side, we need also to take care of possible losses and emission when we are using hydrogen. In fact, hydrogen is a very tiny and diffusive molecule that can leak, we'll see later, along the supply chain. Hydrogen is not a greenhouse gases, as the one that you can see in the slide, so it doesn't have a direct radiative effect, but it is called an indirect greenhouse gases in the sense that it interacts, it alters the mechanism of removal of the greenhouse gases within the atmosphere. So let's look where hydrogen is interfering in the atmosphere. Here you can see the atmosphere layers, and hydrogen is changing the equilibrium of the atmosphere in the troposphere and in the stratosphere, so in the two lower layers. Let's see the effect one by one, starting from the troposphere. The first effect is that when hydrogen is released, part of it is absorbed by the soil, but the remaining part is removed to oxidation. And in particular, hydrogen oxidation requires and consumes hydroxyl radicals, so these OH ions. And this is a problem because these hydroxyl are responsible for the methane removal in the atmosphere. So by reacting with this, methane is, with a series of reactions, then converted to CO2. So if we use these radicals to convert hydrogen and to oxidate hydrogen, we will have more methane in the troposphere, and this will increase the lifetime of methane in the troposphere. This is the largest climate effect of hydrogen. It accounts for about 50% of its climate impact. The second effect, again in the troposphere, is linked with the production of atomic hydrogen. So when hydrogen is oxidized, it produces atomic hydrogen. And atomic hydrogen, again, through a series of different reactions, increase the ozone in the troposphere, which is a greenhouse gases. This effect accounts for 20% of the climate impact of hydrogen. The last effect, which has been discovered in the more recent years, occurs in the stratosphere and is related with the water vapor formation. In the stratosphere, when water vapor is formed from the hydrogen oxidation, we have the effect that the stratosphere is cooled down. So the temperature of the stratosphere is reduced. And this stratospheric cooling leads to mainly two effects. The major one is the fact that being at a lower temperature, the stratosphere emits less radiation back to the space. And so we have more heat trapped within the atmosphere, having an effect in global warming. And the second minor effect is that the water vapor is also responsible for the formation of atmospheric polar clouds, which are reducing the ozone layer, which is protecting us from the UV radiation. So if we consider altogether this effect, we can calculate the global warming potential of hydrogen, which is the amount of energy absorbed in the atmosphere over a certain time horizon compared to the one of CO2. So the global warming potential of CO2 is 1. And here you can see the graph for the global warming potential of hydrogen in 20 and 100 years. And you can see that in 20 years, the effect is, especially in the short term, in 20 years, the effect of hydrogen can be 20 to 40 times the one of CO2. And in 100 years can be between 5 and 20, depending on there is a quite big range of uncertainty. Because of this important effect on the environment, it's important to study and to estimate the leakage along the supply chain. And this is what we have done in the framework of the Hydra project. I will now leave the floor to Davide.
Yeah, thanks, Marta. This is Davide. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yes, Davide.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Marta. And this is Davide Trapani speaking from Politecnico di Torino. And in the final remark of Marta's presentation, she mentioned the hydrogen supply chain. And this is the starting point of my presentation. I would like to start my presentation exploring a bit the concept of hydrogen supply chain. And typically, these terms is used to describe the entire processes, the entire set of processes that are carried out from production of from hydrogen production to hydrogen uses. And in the starting point of our activity is shown in this slide, in which we are describing and presenting our structure of the hydrogen supply chain. The supply chain consists of 5 main stages that are production, handling, storage, transport, and end uses. And to develop an leakage estimation framework, the first step of our activity was a disaggregation of this supply chain structure into the processes that are that can be identified in each product in each stage of the supply chain. So we decided to disaggregate the hydrogen production in considering the technologies that are the well-established and used at the present, and the most promising technology that can be adopted in the near future and also in the long-term scenarios. So for what concerns hydrogen production, we decided to consider hydrogen production through electrolysis, to steam methane reforming, both in conventional and equipped with carbon capture and utilization and storage technologies, and also coal gasification. For what concerns hydrogen handling, we decided to focus our attention on hydrogen compression and hydrogen liquefaction, that are the processes that enable the hydrogen storage both as a compressed gas or as a liquid in a liquid form. For what concerns transport, hydrogen can be transported over long distances through transmission pipeline and distribution pipeline, but also by trucks delivering either compressed hydrogen or liquid hydrogen. And as we saw in the previous presentation, hydrogen can be used in multiple end uses application, including industry, road mobility, residential, aviation and shipping, and power production. Hydrogen leakages can occur in each stage of the hydrogen supply chain I've just described. Hydrogen leakages are usually classified as intentional or unintentional. If we focus on unintentional hydrogen leakages, they can be further distinguished into operational and fugitive emission. For what concerns operational leakages, we can consider the residual hydrogen stream in exhaust gas flow, for example, hydrogen crossover in electrolyzers, but also the boil-off losses that are peculiar of hydrogen storage, of liquid hydrogen storage solution. If we focus on fugitive emission, they can basically happen as a leakage from equipment, but they are usually negligible, but also from pipework, so basically pipe, valves, joints, and seals. Focusing on pipeline, we also have hydrogen diffusion from the pipeline itself. And the last fugitive leakage can occur as a permeation from storage tank. If we focus on intentional hydrogen leakages, they are only operational, and they are mostly related to purging and venting operation, mainly in hydrogen production, hydrogen storage, or hydrogen refueling operations. As I said, hydrogen leakages can occur throughout the value chain, the hydrogen value chain, but at present, the exact amount of hydrogen that is emitted and thus lost into the atmosphere is almost unknown. And basically, due to the lack of proper instruments that are able to detect part per billion concentration. Indeed, the sensors that are currently available at industrial level are installed mainly for safety purposes. So they are able to detect hydrogen concentration in a part per million range. And so this is the main reason behind the lack of direct measurement. So if you want to have an idea of an estimate of the hydrogen leakage rate, and so of the hydrogen leakage along the value chain, we have to rely basically on estimate from literature. And literature in our case includes both peer review article, so scientific papers, but also technical reports. And technical reports turn out to be extremely useful because they are based on the technical expertise from industrial professionals. So they are like a direct experience or field experience on the existing technologies. And so technical report provided valuable insights for estimating the hydrogen leakage. The next steps of our, so basically, in order to create the leakage estimation framework I was mentioning before, the first step was the identification of and the disaggregation of the hydrogen value chain. The next step was the creation and the data collection and the creation of a database, a comprehensive database of the hydrogen leakage rates per each stage of the hydrogen supply chain we are considering and I was describing before. And based on the a data collection from the literature, we were able to estimate the average leakage rate, and we were able to identify a minimum maximum variation for each technology and each processes. And this is one of the main results of the activity we have carried out in the framework of the Hydra project. If we focus a bit on the numbers and the results of this database, we can see that electrolysis exhibit the highest leakage rate and also the largest variation among the hydrogen production routes. So comparing renewable or low carbon hydrogen with alternative, both conventional and innovative solution, electrolysis is one of the most leakage prone processes. If we focus on liquid hydrogen, we can see from the bar in the slides that hydrogen liquefaction, hydrogen delivery, liquid hydrogen delivery, and hydrogen refueling station with liquid hydrogen storage are the more critical processes for what concern the hydrogen storage, handling, storage, and transport. If we focus on storage, we can see that leakage rates for what concern liquid hydrogen are lower compared to other processes involving liquid hydrogen, because specifically for liquid hydrogen storage, mitigation strategies such as the reliquefaction of the boil-off losses can be implemented, and are usually adopted in industrial plants. If we focus on pipeline, we can see that the hydrogen leakage for pipelines, both transmission and distribution, are characterized by a very high uncertainty range. And this is because the actual behavior of hydrogen in existing natural gas pipeline is almost, I won't say unknown, but there are a lot of uncertainty. And we have a limited experience in long distance pipeline dedicated to hydrogen. So this is the reason behind the large variation range. We saw that electrolysis is one of the most leakage prone processes. And I would like to focus a bit on electrolysis and electrolyzers to describe the main and the potential hydrogen leakage sources that can cause hydrogen emission in these technologies. As we saw before, usually the leakages through the casing and the pipework can be negligible. And this is especially true for electrolyzers, because the manufacturing has to be compliant with the ISO standard 22734. So in this case, this contribution can be considered negligible. But the main hydrogen leakage phenomena are related to the venting and purging, as I said before. For what concerns venting, hydrogen is released into the atmosphere during the startup and the shutdown operation. And in this case, the hydrogen venting can be estimated as a 0.1% of the hydrogen production. This is obviously dependent on the number of startup and shutdown procedures that are carried out during a year. And this can obviously, depending on the operating strategy of the electrolyzer itself, but we can estimate that between 50 and 300 startup and shutdown procedures are performed every year, and each procedure can last between 5 and 10 minutes. So we can basically calculate the amount of hydrogen that is released per year due to this kind of operation. Another potential hydrogen losses is due to the hydrogen crossover. So basically, hydrogen can be released together with the vented oxygen due to crossover phenomena across the electrolyte, basically. And in this case, the amount of hydrogen that can be lost is around 0.15% of the hydrogen production. And the last, but very impactful leakage source is related to the purging operation to remove impurities. Because downstream the hydrogen production, it can be, the hydrogen stream can undergo a purification process. And during the regeneration of the hydrogen purification system, up to 10% of the produced hydrogen is used to regenerate the absorbent material. So the hydrogen production itself is used to regenerate the material and then is vented. So this can be one of the main leakage phenomena, and the value is up to 10%. So it can be, this can help us in understanding also the high value, the high leakage rate we saw in the previous slide. If we move forward in the development of our leakage estimation framework, we have identified the process in the hydrogen supply chain. We have characterized each process itself with a leakage estimation, with an estimate of the hydrogen leakage rate. So we now need data related to the hydrogen demand and the hydrogen quantities flowing in each step of the hydrogen supply chain itself. To do so, we relied on hydrogen demand data and hydrogen supply chain structure from leading international organizations in the energy sector, and in particular, the International Energy Agency, the Hydrogen Council, and the International Renewable Energy Agency. Based on the data available from these organizations, we were able to identify, define, and assess hydrogen scenario at present. So basically in IEA 2023 scenario, but also mid-term scenario for 2030 and long-term scenario for 2050. If we look at the graph, at the bar plot on the left-hand side, on the left of this slide, we can see that in all the scenarios, hydrogen demand is always dominated by industry, both in the present but also in the future scenario. We can also know that there is a progressive increase in the hydrogen-based road mobility starting from 2030 and even more clearly in 2050 scenario. We can also note that there will be an emerging hydrogen role in aviation and shipping, especially in 2050 scenario. And an interesting point is the availability of conflicting data on residential sector, because we can know that according to the Hydrogen Council, a very small amount of hydrogen will be used in the residential sector also in 2030, while International Energy Agency does not consider these end uses. And the difference is even more evident for 2050 scenarios, in which IEA is still neglecting this final use of hydrogen, while both Hydrogen Council and the International Energy Agency are projecting some demand for residential application. And we will see in the next slides that all these differences in the hydrogen demand also affect hydrogen losses and hydrogen leakages in the supply chain, because residential application are obviously connected to the distribution pipelines. So basically, to sum up what we have done, combining the leakage rate and the hydrogen quantity in each stage of the supply chain, we were able to estimate the hydrogen leakages along the supply chain. And in this slide, we have summarized all the results for the different scenarios. We can see that at present, so basically, according to the data provided by International Energy Agency for 2023, we can estimate that at present, 1.3 million tons of hydrogen are emitted to the atmosphere per year based on the existing scenario. These leakage increase by almost a factor 3 in both the scenario from IEA and Hydrogen Council for 2030, and dramatically increase for long-term scenarios, reaching up to 45.3 million tons per year in the Hydrogen Council scenario, while we can see that the estimate for International Energy Agency and IRENA for 2050 are almost around 24 million tons per year. If we compare this number with the projected hydrogen demand, we can estimate a leakage rate for the entire supply chain. For the present scenario, it can be estimated in 1.3%, while for 2030, it's around 2.2% for both the scenarios under investigation, while for 2050 scenario, it can range from 4.7 up to 6.9. We double-checked our results with the data available in literature, and we found out that these results are consistent with the literature estimate, basically reporting value for 1.2% for 2020 scenario and leakage rate in the range between 4.5 and 5.6 for 2050 scenario. So the methodology we have developed is robust, and the results are online with strong references available in the literature. But we move forward compared to what it's usually done and typically done in the literature, because we try to identify the main responsible of the hydrogen leakages along the supply chain. And to do so, we performed a hydrogen leakage breakdown for both the 2050 and the 2030 and 2050 scenario, with the aim of identifying the processes that are responsible for the largest shares of hydrogen leakage. And if we focus on the 2030 scenario, we can know that electrolysis, despite covering a limited hydrogen demand, is responsible for more than 50% of the total leakages that are released during the production stage. While if we focus on the pie chart on the right-hand side of the slide, we can know that Hydrogen Council was one of the scenarios projecting the demand in the residential sector. And this implies both a leakage itself in the residential end uses, but also a leakage in the distribution pipeline that are the solution that is adopted to serve the residential demand itself. If we go to the 2050 scenarios, we can know that in all the scenarios, electrolysis confirms its potential critical role among the different production pathways. And this is a very interesting result, because all the scenario have for 2050 have a large reliance on these technologies, but we have to take into consideration this potential criticality. We can also know that liquid hydrogen emerges as a key contributor in both the handling and transport phases, while this was not true. This was not true for 2030 scenario. So in the long-term scenario, liquid hydrogen will be responsible for a large share of the hydrogen leakages in the different phases of the hydrogen supply chain. And we can also note that road mobility, including as well refueling operation, it will be one of the primary leakage source among the end user, as we can see in all the pie charts in the slides. So if we go to the conclusion and the take-home messages from the presentation, we saw that in the Marta's presentation, we saw that hydrogen is not a greenhouse gas, but it does contribute with an indirect climate effect. Hydrogen leakage, we saw that hydrogen leakages can occur in each stage of the supply chain. And basically, the amount of hydrogen leakage is still unknown. So we also noted that when we try to quantify the hydrogen leakage rate, we face a lot of uncertainty that translates into a significant variability in the hydrogen leakage rate. If we focus on the result, we can note that electrolysis emerges as a leakage-prone process among the production pathway, and liquid hydrogen involves multiple critical processes like liquefaction, transport, and refueling. Therefore, in order to fully exploit the hydrogen potential for the energy transition, we need a precise and reliable sensor and monitoring procedure to quantify the hydrogen leakage phenomena and to mitigate them. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Davide, and also Marta for your presentation. We are in delay, but we're going to go on with the presentation of end users from other projects. So we will start with the presentation of the Life Ocean project by Markus Wagner from Siemens Energy. Markus, the floor is yours.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm the project manager of the Life Ocean project. The Life Ocean project It's a project between Siemens Energy and San Lorenzo. San Lorenzo is our partner and company building super yachts in Italy. And the timeline of our project is 3 years, and the end is mid of this year. And the goal of our project is to make yachting more sustainable. And the idea behind it is to use green, sustainable produced alcohol to generate electricity on yachts. To our company, so we are very experienced when it comes to fuel cells. As you can see here on the left side, we already started in 1965 putting fuel cells into vessels, ships, and yeah, everything evolved. Nowadays, our focus is on the fuel cells fed by hydrogen and pure oxygen, but we already built forklifts and buses around 2000. And yeah, in Erlangen, we have a huge test facility where we build up the system, and yeah, we do our daily business, and where we tested the system for the Live Ocean project. Now the question is, why alcohol, or especially methanol for shipping? Methanol has a lot of advantages compared to other hydrogen storage technologies, as you can see here. The storage capacity is much higher than compressed or liquefied hydrogen, and compared to ammonia, which is also in the race for fueling vessels with hydrogen, the methanol does not need to be cooled down or compressed. So it's easy to handle. So you can basically just use the infrastructure you have already today. And yeah, that's the reason why methanol is very favorable for the shipping industry to be used in the future. And yeah, as some of you may know, Siemens Energy also is into the production of methanol itself. So like in South America, we have the HARO only project where wind energy is used to produce methanol. And so we have somehow a holistic approach to create methanol, let's say from a propeller, from wind energy, up to the propeller in the vessel to accelerate the vessel. And the next step, our question was, how do we want to proceed in the project? So there are two possible solutions. You can either use an external reformer where you put in the methanol and an LTPEM fuel cell to create electricity, or you go with the HDPEM. So the basic principle is you don't use the pure methanol, you always need to mix it with water, and ratio 60-40 more or less, and then you put it into a reformer, then you get hydrogen, which you feed into the fuel cell, and then you get the electricity. Then in our project, we spent a lot of time for the decision LTPEM or HDPEM technology. As you can see here, one of our concepts for the room on the vessel, where we had a fuel cell, the green box, and the reformers in the brown box. And we quickly encountered a lot of problems when it comes to certification of the vessels, because somehow you need to transport the hydrogen produced in the reformers to the fuel cells, and the methanol as well. You need to transport to the reformers in the room, and therefore you need a lot of pipings, and these pipings need to be double walled, and you need room ventilation and stuff like this to make sure nothing can happen in case of an emergency. This was pretty troublesome, and that's one of the reasons we decided to go with an HDPEM solution. The difference is that the HD solutions available on the market are small boxes where the reformer is pretty close to the fuel cell. So the hydrogen has a very small distance to go from the reformer to the fuel cell, just a few centimeters. And due to the HDPEM technology, so you have higher temperatures, you don't need to clean the hydrogen produced in the reformer to clean it from poisonous byproducts in the hydrogen that could harm LTPEM fuel cells. HDPEMs don't have this problem. You can see our final solution as a 3D model. At the bottom, again, is explained how it works, and you have on the right bottom corner the reformer and the fuel cell. These two are put into these boxes here, and these boxes are then in these cabinets. One of these boxes able to produce 5 kilowatts of power, and then we have 10 of these boxes in one cabinet. In total, we have then 2 cabinets, so 20 boxes, and 20 times 5 makes a solution with up to 100 kilowatt. Another thing that we were able to create, which we found pretty nice, is that in the beginning we started to have tanks for methanol and for water, because as you see here, these need to be mixed for the reformer. But then we decided we don't need any water because we're fuel cells, we produce water on our own. So why don't we use this again? And then we implemented a condenser box that you can see on the left side here. So the exhaust gas going out of the fuel cell will be cooled down to gather all the water produced in the process. And this water we collect in a box, and then we clean it up in a cabinet here to ultra pure quality on a very small space. And then we mix it with our mixing system that we developed again with methanol and 60 to 40 relationship, and then send it back into the system, and then everything starts from the beginning. So we have a closed water cycle, which is sustainable for the water consumption as well. Here's a short animation where you can see how the procedure is. So another advantage here is that you have a lot of single units with reformer and fuel cell. So in case one breaks for any reason, it's easy to swap it out and swap a new one in, and the system keeps running. That's as well an advantage compared to the LTPEM version with external reformers. And finally, here you see one impression how the system looks right now on the vessel, on a super yacht in the garage. And on the left-hand side here, you can see the methanol tank. In front of it is a nitrogen generator that creates a nitrogen atmosphere for safety reasons in the tank. And then the methanol flows into our system. On the left-hand side, here's the reformer, the condenser. And the mixing and water treatment system in the left cabinet. And we have the cooling water and fuel distribution, where the fuel will distribute it to all the fuel cells. And the backside of the system is the ventilation system, where all the exhaust gases will be led to the condenser box, cool down, and we regain the water, and everything starts from the beginning. So to make up some time, I hope I could save some minutes, 2 minutes, as far as I can see. If you have any questions, you can contact me. Here are my contact details. Now, thank you for your attention, and then I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Marcos. If there are any questions, please write them in the chat so that we can address them later. We can go on with this overview of hydrogen connection of Hydrogen Valley, so the AdvancedH2Valley project. So Olivier, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Nice to meet you. My name is Olivier Job. I work in life as a business developer, and I am the project coordinator of AdvancedH2Valley, and I would like to thank the warrant to give the opportunity to speak about our common project. I will talk about this hydrogen ecosystem, which is a small hydrogen valley. We have been awarded by the Clean Hydrogen Partnership 8 million euros subsidy in order to deploy a full H2 ecosystem, which will be up to more than 60 million of capital expenditure in order to deploy production capacities, distribution capacities also, and usages, along with cross-cutting activities and communication and dissemination activities related to the project. Basically, as you can see, we are almost 15 partners and beneficiaries around this project. And the main objectives are to deploy production capacities, which will produce up to 500 tons of renewable hydrogen a year. Then we will also deploy 2 hydrogen refueling stations. The first one in the center of France in the city of Tours, and the second one in the western part of France in the city of Nantes. And along with this distribution capacities, we will deploy up to 29 vehicles, which will use the hydrogen and the renewable hydrogen that we will produce with it in the hydrogen valley. This project has started in January 2024, and it will end by the beginning of 2027, from when we will be operating this small valley. Regarding the usages of the project, they are mostly linked to a mobility market, because the western part of France is not that much an industrial area, and the development of hydrogen and renewable hydrogen in the western part of France is closely linked to the development of the mobility H2 market. And what we can see, and something which is quite relevant with regards to the AdvancedH2Valley project, is that we have both on-road vehicle and off-road vehicles. So I will share with you an example. Yes, if you want to. Yes, this is on the one hand the kind of infrastructures and usages that we are about to deploy in the area of the project. This is, for instance, the project of the Nantes city, where we will deploy an hydrogen refueling station, which will have the capacity to deliver up to 1 ton of hydrogen a day, both on as a compressed hydrogen, both on 350 standard bar and a 700 bar standard. This means that we will be able to fill light commercial vehicles and light vehicles with the 700 bar standard, and heavy-duty trucks with the 350 standards in this refueling station, which has a strategy which is to propose an energetic mix where it will deliver the fuels, because we will have both compressed natural gas, biogas, and renewable hydrogen in order to decarbonize the mobility with heavy trucks and light commercial vehicles. And as you can see, we have a strategic implementation in the close to the city center of Nantes, where we are on the road of heavy transportation, which comes from Paris until the southwest of France. So this is, on the one hand, one of the usages that we are deploying here in the valley. And on the other hand, we have off-road, let's say off-road usages of hydrogen, still using fuel cells, because this is the technology that is implemented in those vehicles. We are implementing and contemplating to deploy harbor logistics thanks to fuel cell technology, because one of our partners is in the Saint-Nazaire Harbor for the logistics. And we are also a partner, which is the Department of Loire-Atlantique, with the ferry, which goes from the south shore of the Loire River to the north shore of the Loire River, in order to make the path for the people coming from one shore to the other shore, for pedestrian and the cars of the people. So we have those specific usages also within the scope of the project that will be deployed during the AdvancedH2Valley program. And all the supply chain will be made from our if I come back from the production sites to the consumption sites with a supply chain made of truck trailers, because we produce the hydrogen at compressed at 380 bar, and we send it by trucks to the consumption sites, whether it is an hydrogen refilling station or small industrial consumers. So this is the way we would like to upscale the hydrogen economy here in the western part of France. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivier, for this very nice presentation. So we are going to close with the presentation of the NhyRA project from Vittoria Troisi of SNAM. Vittoria, you can start.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction and the invitation to this webinar. I will now share my presentation. Hope you can see.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So today I'm going to present you the NhyRA project. I work as an R&D expert in SNAM, that is a transmission system operator in Italy, and today I'm representing the coordination task of NhyRA project. So here's the agenda of my presentation. I will briefly introduce the project and go through the partners and context and objectives of the project, and then I will show you the methodological approach that we will follow during the implementation of the project, and also show you the timeline expected of the deliverables and the main activities of the work packages. So NhyRA is the acronym for Paranormative Research on Hydrogen Releases Assessment. And here, so you can say prenormative, because all the results that will be produced during the project implementation have the ambition to be to build the basis of the development of a normative technical framework that at the moment still doesn't exist. And is focused on hydrogen releases assessment, because the general objective of the project is to assess the hydrogen releases that are associated to the growing hydrogen value chain and market. Here you can see we have 15 partners from 9 countries, and the project will last 36 months since January 2024, where we have the kickoff meeting, up to December 2026. Here in the details, the partners that are working in the project. So we have 2 transmission system operators, SNAM from Italy and Enagas from Spain. Then we have international energy players like ENGIE from France and Equinor from Norway. We have also engineering companies like Baker Hughes from Italy and Linde from Germany, and also we have the National Metrology Institute from UK, that is the national NPL, and we have also some European research centers and universities that will implement the scientific aspects of the project, like Unibo, the Italian Energy Agency, Fondazione Bruno Kessler, ENIC, that is the Polish Oil and Gas Research Institute, and then also DLR, that is the German Aerospace Center, and then University of Surrey from England, and the US University of California. Finally, we have GERG, that still puts together all the European players, since it is the European Gas Research Group that deals with many working groups related to hydrogen. And regarding the project context, as we have seen also in previous presentations, hydrogen has an energy sector is expected to play a central role in meeting the Green Deal by 2050. As also has been already showed, the hydrogen molecule is not a direct greenhouse gas, but it can react with molecules in the atmosphere, acting as an indirect greenhouse gas. So since there is a lot of uncertainty about the amount of the hydrogen releases in the future hydrogen market, it's important to start thinking about the establishment of a dedicated normative framework, including also testing methodologies for hydrogen releases that still doesn't exist. So methane emissions regulating scheme can act as a good reference to start also the work related to hydrogen. In NhyRA project, we have main objectives related to the creation of a hydrogen emissions inventory for the anthropogenic hydrogen emissions, and then also the development and the validation of methodologies for the detection and quantification of hydrogen emissions. Also, we will try to set up scenarios at different time horizons for hydrogen emissions quantification. And finally, we will try to provide recommendations to international standard bodies and propose potential mitigation strategies in order to reduce the identified hydrogen releases. Here you can see the overview of the work package activities and also how they are interconnected. So first of all, the work package 1, led by Unibo, is focused on the definition of a hydrogen releases inventory. So first of all, the identification of the sections of the supply chain which are more expected to release the major quantity of hydrogen. Then there will be the assessment of the protocols and the methodologies for the quantification of hydrogen releases in units, both theoretical and experimental. And of course, these methods will be validated through laboratory and field test assessment in the work package 3. Then the results of these experiments will will be included in the hydrogen releases inventory that will be updated until the end of the process. So the core is the update and to deliver to the European community this hydrogen releases inventory that will cover the major sections of the supply chain of hydrogen, so starting from production, storage, transportation, and end users, and that will come both from literature and also from experimental results that will be performed during the project. Then the hydrogen releases inventory will feed the design of a simulation tool that will foresee the expected hydrogen releases from specific sections of the supply chain. And also there will be the proposal of the potential mitigation strategies. These will feed the hydrogen releases scenarios at different time horizons, so that will that will design both with and without mitigation actions. Of course, we have the work packages related to management and communication and dissemination that will go through all the duration of the project. As you can see here in the timeline of the activities, we are now in the beginning of 2025, all the activities have started, all the work packages, and I will go briefly through the main work packages, just to also to recall that the majority of the deliverables of this project will be published on the NhyRA website that is already available, and of course you can contact us in order to have further details. But just to have, just to be you aware that soon 2 deliverables that are related to work package 1 will be published on the NhyRA website that are related, one to the description of the main routes of the hydrogen supply chains, especially with focus of the sections that are expected to release the major quantity of hydrogen. And also it will be released the first version of the hydrogen releases inventory that will be updated, as I was mentioning, up to the end of the project. Because we know that up to now, the literature is scarce in this context, and also data maybe are not in agreement, and sometimes it's also difficult to compare data because of different units of measures, different conventional. So it's really necessary to have together available data and also to point out what is the necessity in which sections it's necessary to focus in the future research. So these deliverables public will be, so as I was mentioning, will be soon available in NhyRA website. Then also speaking about work package 2, that is more focused on the development of methodology for hydrogen releases quantification. In this concern, or it will be available soon, still public, a report which contains a list of techniques for the detection and measurement of hydrogen emissions, because as it was mentioned also in previous presentation, it's still really necessary to assess, to agree on the methodologies that are available for detecting hydrogen, both for safety reasons and, of course, economical. And as far as it's concerned, the work package 3 activities, these are more concentrated on experimental work for both laboratory and field tests in order to validate the methodologies previously defined. And in this case, we will also hopefully start this field test activity by next June, and we will exploit both sites that are available in from our consortium partners and both outside the consortium. Work package 4, as I was mentioning, is mainly focused on the development of a simulation tool that will try to measure to predict the hydrogen emissions from specific sections of the supply chain. So we will also we will also organize hopefully workshops with manufacturers of, for example, of electrolyzers, in order to also get their real necessities and to have feedback from real world industries in order to understand where to focus and which are the main parameters to consider in the development of this tool. Finally, the last technical, let's say, work package is the one that will focus on the definition of hydrogen releases scenarios. This is an activity already ongoing and will proceed until the end of the project. And also, I would like to mention an important activity that is still included in this work package, that is the cooperation with projects that are synergetic to NhyRA. For example, Hydra project, because they have, let's say, synergetic objectives, and it's really important to compare and to have an exchange of let's say even the main results in order to achieve common goals. Finally, yeah, as I was mentioning, the work package 6, that is mainly related to the communication, dissemination, organization of workshops, and then the coordination activity that is led by SNAM. So here are my contacts and one of my boss that we are involved in the coordination activities. And thank you very much for your attention. I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Vittoria. Actually, I see that there is just a side note in the chat that asks about hydrogen, gaseous hydrogen, global warming potential. Actually, yeah, I mean, you're right. And we are also considering with our modeling activities related to the other project, of course, the how much hydrogen will substitute fossil fuels, so to understand not only the effect of the leakages, but also that we are going to avoid greenhouse gases emission from those gases, and as well as consider leakages of other gases related to hydrogen production or use. We are also, for example, taking into consideration possible increase in water vapor concentration in the atmosphere, because this could also have an impact. So this was just to very briefly address the question. Again, thank you for your time, for participating in the webinar, and thank you to all the speakers for their availability to present the results of our project and also to present the other projects, because it was very, very interesting to see, and it's always good to have a networking opportunity with all of you. Just to conclude the webinar, we would like to ask if you can save some very, very brief minutes to answer a question in this webinar questionnaire that we prepared, which will help us also to gather some more feedback from you with respect to the results that we showed, and consider these opinions and feedbacks for our future activities in the project.
Yes.
So, Cristina, do you want to add?
Yes, just an invitation to take just a few minutes to complete the final survey, and the webinar recording will soon available on the official project website, Hydra project.eu. So you can revisit the content on or share it with your colleagues. So thank you again for your time and your interest.
Thank you very much to everyone, and have
Thanks
a
a
good
lot.
day.
You too.
Thank you a lot.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.